Okay, folks. So today we are diving into something pretty heavy, Nietzsche. And specifically his idea that God is dead, which right off the bat, I think we should clarify. We are not talking about like a literal death.
Right.
You know, this is more of a metaphor. It's more about like this kind of decline of religion's power, especially in like modern times. So the question then becomes, if God is dead in this metaphorical sense, where do we go from there? What happens to our sense of meaning, purpose, morality, all those big things?
Yeah.
And luckily for us, a listener sent in this really interesting excerpt about Nietzsche's philosophy, and that's what we're going to use as a jumping off point.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think it's really important to start by emphasizing that, Nietzsche wasn't like, some kind of like atheist cheerleader. Like he wasn't out there celebrating the death of God. He was more of like a, cultural observer, I guess you could say. He like diagnosing the situation.
And he saw this decline of religion, especially Christianity. And to him, it really showed this huge shift in how people understand the world.
Yeah.
For centuries, religion provided this like framework, it was the bedrock for values, for purpose, for meaning.
Yeah.
And what Nietzsche saw was that bedrock crumbling.
Okay, so like imagine,
Yeah.
if that bedrock is like literally crumbling beneath our feet, what's next? Like what happens then?
Well, Nietzsche definitely saw some pretty big challenges arising from all this. One of the most daunting ones to think about is this potential loss of like objective morality.
Ooh.
Right? Like if there's no divine authority calling the shots, saying what's right and what's wrong, then moral codes, they become subjective. And you could almost get this feeling of like anything goes right.
Yeah, it's like a little unnerving, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
It's losing your moral compass a bit. Not knowing which way is up. But Nietzsche's critique goes even deeper than that, right? It wasn't just about religion.
He was suspicious of any system, really, that claimed to hold like the absolute truth, whether that was science, philosophy, even political ideologies. He saw those as potential placements for God in a way, like we're just substituting one authority figure for another.
Wow, that's too deep. So like he's saying, hey, don't just swap one dogma for another.
Exactly.
Right. That's still a pretty radical idea even today.
For sure.
But then the question is, okay, where do we go from there?
Right.
Is it all just doom and gloom?
Well, not necessarily. I think this is where things get really interesting with Nietzsche, because he also saw this crisis of meaning as like this incredible opportunity. Without these prepackaged truths, we're actually free to like define our own values and beliefs. We're not just passively accepting dogma anymore. We become the creators of our own meaning.
So instead of like falling into that existential void, that nihilism, what's the point of it all?
Yeah.
We can actually rise above that.
Exactly. And this leads us to, I think, one of Nietzsche's most famous and honestly often misunderstood ideas, the Übermensch.
The Übermensch.
Yeah, which is often translated as like the overman.
The overman.
Now, it's super important, I think, to remember this isn't about like becoming some superhuman with superpowers. It's more of an ideal. It's about someone who embraces life's challenges. They create their own values and they forge their own unique path, regardless of like any external structures.
So like leveling up as a human.
Right.
Like becoming the author of your own story. But wasn't Nietzsche like kind of a pessimist? Did he really believe that everyone could reach this overman state?
That's a great question. And it really gets to the heart of, I think, some of the debates around Nietzsche's work. While he presented the overman as like an ideal, he also acknowledged that it's really difficult to actually achieve that. Creating your own values, living authentically in a world that doesn't give you easy answers.
Right.
That's a tough thing.
It's a challenge for sure.
It is.
What strikes me is that what Nietzsche was talking about, like over a century ago, is so relevant to the world today.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're seeing this decline of religious institutions, rise of all these individualized beliefs, people constantly questioning traditional authority figures. It's almost like he predicted it.
It really is. Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
Right.
What does this mean for us?
That's the million-dollar question. Ultimately, I think Nietzsche's God is dead declaration is a provocation. It's a challenge to like really wrestle with this question of meaning in a world that doesn't give us those easy answers. If we're not bound by these like pre-existing systems. What values will we choose to create? What values will we live by?
Those are heavy questions.
Or,
It's like he's urging us to take responsibility, not just for our own lives, but for the values that, like, shape the world around us. This has been quite the deep dive. I'm left with this image of, like, standing at a crossroads with the power to choose my own direction. What about you? What resonates most with you from all this?
for me, it's that tension between freedom and responsibility. Yes, we have this freedom to create our own meaning, but that freedom comes with the huge responsibility to choose wisely, to build values that lead to a good life in a just world. It's not easy, but it's a challenge worth taking on.
Absolutely. And, this is just the beginning. We encourage you to keep exploring Nietzsche's work, grapple with these big questions, and define for yourself what it means to create meaning in a world without those easy answers. Until next time.